Generation full of incels, and they wonder why there's a male loneliness epidemic. Incel literally means involuntarily celibate. So, men are lonely because they're lonely, is what she's saying. It's circular nonsense. Guys, it makes sense. Guys are lonely because they're lonely. Why didn't I think of that? Why didn't we think of that? Oh my god. Men are lonely because they're lonely.
Panic is flooding the streets as men are getting lonelier and authorities are urging women, to more actively seek out relationships with men and be more forgiving of their off-putting behavior. At the same time, the number in women-hating communities grow. The invitation to tie themselves to socially inept men has been received with indignation by many women, but as the clumsier, more evident attempts at accommodating inadequate boys and men fail due to their arrogance, incel culture and philosophies are being propagated, adapted, and sanitized in ways that only make identifying the odd ones more difficult and calling out their behavior more unreasonable. Let's take a look at the many ways that incel culture and vocabulary is infiltrating your everyday life.
Have you ever seen a woman that looks so good that you honestly want to know how is she doing it? I mean, it's just like her look is perfection. She's pretty, she's gorgeous, she dresses well. Just everything about her looks like it takes a lot of time. Well, she's beauty maxing. And beauty maxing and looks maxing is not the same.
The term incel originated online on a website designed by a woman, Alana, to host involuntarily celibate people with the hope of connecting with others who share the experience and yearn for community in a world that could perceive their failure to couple up as shameful. As the creator stepped away from the forum, the term spread to 4chan and Reddit circles already inhabited by isolated men. While Alana's original forum tried to offer support to people of any gender in matters of romantic relationships, once the label incel was appropriated by men online, it became about social isolation in a broader sense. Incels were able to identify, as many sociologists have, that as straight men grow up, their social circle and standing are largely dependent on the woman they're coupled up with. However, instead of arriving at the same conclusions most academics have, that men need to change their superficial and asocial behaviors to build stronger independent relationships. Instead, they saw their involuntary celibacy as women shooting them out of society as a whole, without a girlfriend or wife to do the heavy lifting of remembering important dates, organizing celebrations, and starting small talk and creating a bridge with influential figures in their social and professional spheres. These socially awkward men were left to their own devices, witnessing how men with partners or simply charisma move up in life as they become more lonely. So, despite much of the ridicule online being about how no one wants to have sex with them, my theory is that in the story that incels tell themselves, the real reward they hope to unlock is not just physical relations but social victory. Despite their label suggesting that the main focus they would have in seeking a relationship with a woman being sexual satisfaction, my theory is that actually they see women as the key to unlock the life of a hegemonic man, the type of man that has it all because society sees them as deserving of such. The term incel rapidly changed from a descriptor for an isolated person to an angry man who feels wronged by the world. In 2014, 22-year-old Elliot Rodger uploaded a video on YouTube where he announced his intention to punish women and the men they were attracted to for rejecting him. Following this post, he took on a violent rampage, claiming the lives of multiple men and women and injuring others. Despite not being anywhere near the first of its class as a misogynist-motivated criminal, Roger quickly became the face of inceldom. And while the public spectacle that his crimes caused horrified many, it also guided plenty of angry men to online communities that share his belief. Their lives were miserable and ruinous because women refused to be their partners. Throughout the 2010s, incel forums grew and developed their culture, with uniting principles, a jargon, and living philosophies. As their communities amassed more members, they started to segment, with celibacy no longer being the deciding factor on whether someone is an incel or not, but their view on life, and most importantly, men-women relationships. Some incels subscribe to the black pill ideology, believing there is no way out of being a social failure and thus do nothing but sit in their rooms and complain. On the other hand, you have the blank maxers, who are trying to improve some aspect of themselves in the hopes of escaping the fate of the incels. Sadly, this often means changing their looks to what other men tell them women find attractive, which is not only often inaccurate but also fails to consider the personality traits that make them repellent. Some incels have created their factions around shared racial identity, as the origin inceldom is notoriously racist and has terms around their eugenist beliefs. Some others have such deep-rooted hatred for women that they are united simply by the belief that men should be the dictators when it comes to sex, and have made patron saints out of documented traffickers. Despite the time I have used to explain incel culture to you, my main focus with this video is actually to discuss how their cultural elements are infiltrating the everyday lives of regular people. As I hinted earlier, they have developed code words to identify themselves and others, and classify people according to how they see them. Chads are the attractive, socially successful men, usually white, muscular, and with strong, defined features. Stacys are the women who want those men. They are usually represented as the female counterpart of the Chad, white, skinny, but big-breasted, blonde, and vapid. There are also the Beckys, the women who are not as stereotypically attractive as the Stacys. They are simpler, more basic, less curvy, and less flashy, according to them. So they are seen as more attainable. But that does not save them from the hate, as incels believe they always secretly harbor desire for chads, and thus are insincere if they show interest in someone that incels consider in their own level. The chat was probably one of the first incel terms to reach casual use by other spheres of the internet. Thanks to their use of memes, contextless diagrams created by incels were picked up by users and repurposed in other conversations. Just like it would happen with many other incel terms, most did not seem clear on the original meaning. People used it for muscular but stupid men, but also sometimes use it for men who are doing or being something admirable. Two spheres that have done enormous amounts of work to normalize incel terminology and their way of viewing society are the manosphere commentators and the hypergamy community. By looking at and explaining romantic relationships through the same lens, incels call the sexual market value. When saying manosphere commentators, I don't refer exclusively to commentary content creators, but to men that make their entire internet life about commenting and criticizing others' behaviors as pseudo-anthropologists only armed with incel theories as their tools. This community preaches the need to go back to traditional values only insofar as it benefits them, and keeps women in servitude to them while maintaining an attractive appearance that takes much more upkeep and effort than that of the man. Most of their content and conversations are about catching women being hypocrites about how they say they want a relationship that is supportive and not based on money, but also they want a man that is able to provide, which we'll talk about later. Not because they think this will help them get companionship, but because proving their thesis that women are liars and would never truly love them will get them approval from other lonely men. A huge part of their narrative is also the promise that women will hit, quote, the wall, meaning that after a certain age, usually their 30s, they will stop being attractive and will suffer social isolation all the same. A term that, you guessed, was formulated by loser men who pray for the judgment day of women they desire, incels. Essentially, this community has made more palatable a lot of the terms and theories that incels share in what once was a small community, making it more accessible to men who are in the middle point between incel and regular social person. On the other hand, the hypergamy community is mostly composed of women and has the guiding message of marry up, meaning find a man with more money than them today and marry. While the term hypergamy was used in social science studies when observing marrying practices within the Indian caste systems, it was brought back and popularized by incel forums in their dissection of women's behavior, as a part of their theory that all women want chads, in this case specifically rich men, and how women are willing to overlook behavior they would deem unbearable on an incel because their partner has money. With this observation, I am not commenting on the ethics of marrying up. It is to highlight how easily incel jargon has infiltrated other communities that are now seen nearly as controversial. In fact, many champion hypergamy influencers as feminist figures who allow women to be more overt in their ambitions, but their philosophy is still promoting the misogynistic narrative that incels proclaim, that women's loyalty is fickle, their interest superficial, and their affection can be withheld with malicious intent. Despite the fact that most people know at least one woman that is/has been with a man who fails at meeting any standard, reality has not been able to discourage the spreading of incel propaganda through the lips of women and the acceptance of this propaganda by women who are looking for a way to deal with the hardships of life, not realizing they're buying into their dehumanization under a new label. The dating coaches and gurus on both sides of the gender war also have developed hierarchical systems to figure out who you're allowed to fancy and who you should settle for, with words like alpha, beta, and omega being used much in the same way that incels have used it for years. Recently, femininity coaches have been promoting the most blatant pink-washed incel term I can think of, beauty maxing, using the maxing suffix to imply enhancing physical attractiveness. The use of this term is not outrageous to me because it's more dangerous than the marriage or classification theories, but because, thanks to people like Clavicular, the general public actually has knowledge of the women-hating circles it originated in and the destructive spirals it induces. Yet women with perfect hair and soft voices are convinced they can repackage it into the new way to sell women on the extremely exhausting performance of femininity. As fascinating as seeing the phenomenon occur in women-only spaces is, a demonstration of how easily people fall back on gender essentialism even coming from people who hate them, I promised this video would be about infiltration at large. And if you need evidence, look at this clip about crispy maxing, this one about cheese maxing, this one of a teacher explaining maxing to parents but not explaining the origins, thus leaving those confused parents without probably the most important piece of context. In the same way, younger people and worryingly young children have increasingly used mugging, a term that, while originated in bodybuilding circles, has been expanded by incels to what it means today, which is overwhelmingly outshining someone in attractiveness. I am not suggesting that everyone who uses these terms is a part of a deeply misogynistic group that incites violence. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. During a time of economic, moral, and political unrest, the normalization of terms, and therefore ideas, that originate from hatred for vulnerable groups only make it more acceptable to be open about those beliefs and act on them without being socially punished. This is exactly why it's so dangerous to normalize and accept extreme language that leads to extreme behavior, like those that incels have demonstrated in the past.